know. And then chat, if anything happens, just let me know, let Carrie know. We can figure it out. I can do some
Okay.
more tap dancing. I can even do backflips if you like. Just
Good
kidding.
enough. Ruth already has a question. I haven't even started yet.
I know. They're ready. They're eager. Go ahead, Ruth. What's up?
Thank you. I'm not seeing that handout in the, I just see the class evaluations for today and self-paced literacy or
Okay.
digital literacy.
Is that the case for everyone else? Just to make sure?
No,
Yes. All right. So let me
No,
do.
I've found mine.
I found
You
mine.
found it?
It's
Okay. This.
So-
Go ahead.
so right next to the, excuse me, it says Thursday, and then underneath that says Role of Advocacy. There's a tiny little undercase letter I with a circle around it. You click on that little icon and the PDF is there. It's a weird spot.
It is.
Thank
And for the sake
you.
of time, thank you for the explanation. I love that. I'm always going to refer you back to the student portal, but for the sake of time, I'm also dropping it in the chat. So those of you that are having trouble for that, just now you have it because we want to get this going. All right, Chad, it's all yours, sir.
And also, you don't need to write this second. I mean, I'll be showing the slides as we move forward through this. So, everyone hear me okay, I hope. Good enough. Morning all. Well, who needs coffee when your Wi-Fi goes down? So, anyhow, let me get started before. So just a quick question for folks. I always try to do this as a little bit of a poll before I start in on this presentation. How many of you participated in the CAPS concierge program? I don't know if that's exactly what they call it, but it's where they will help walk you through the application process to be in this training, a series of trainings. I think if you live within 100 miles, 150 miles, I'm not sure, of Los Angeles, they'll actually come out and visit you at your home if need be, and walk you through the process. Did anybody hear about that at all? Looking at both full screens, holy cow, 45 people. Really, out of 45, I'm not seeing one single person. I mean, Ruth's got her hand up, but I think that's a leftover. Wow. Carlos, honestly, you guys really need to think about.
We got to work on our advertisement.
That better. So the reason why none of you benefited from the CAPS concierge program is because it doesn't really exist. I just lied to you at the beginning of this training. There is no such thing. So here's one thing I know from everybody on this right now is that you've had at least one successful advocacy experience. Otherwise, you wouldn't be sitting in the Zoom. You had to, I'm guessing there were some forms you had to fill out, correct? There were like some deadlines in the mix. Did you get to pick those deadlines? No, it was those jerks over at CAPS. They're the ones that created those deadlines for you. Anybody here, was there like some sort of a written statement you had to put in as well? Oh, you wanted to be in there? Anyone like doing those written statements? Anybody here love doing that stuff at all? Anybody? One? Shawnee, I got one thumbs up. Okay, Carlos, did you enjoy writing that? Okay, two. Sure. 2 out of 45 with Carlos Gomez. I'm sorry. Wow. So 2. So no one. So had you had your choice, you probably wouldn't have written that thing, correct? But you had to. Why?
In order to like really express why we want to be here, why we deserve a spot.
Part of it, once again, and I keep referring to them as those jerks over at CAPS, is because they made you. Right? They set up the deadlines, they set up the requirements, they set up all of that stuff. You didn't get to pick any of it. You had to basically comply with what they set up. Otherwise, you wouldn't be sitting here right now. And there probably was a sequence, right? There was this had to be first, this was second, this was third. If you reversed it, you probably wouldn't be sitting here. If you didn't fill everything out completely, you probably wouldn't be sitting here, right? So there's this process that you have to go through that you have no control over really about how it's set up. It's about how you respond to it. And if you don't respond to it effectively, you don't get the thing that you wanted, which was what to be here. I know this is a huge revelation for everyone. But the thing is, that's the same thing with almost anything you have to do with most of the advocacy that you're going to do in your role. Right? You need to figure out what you want. You need to figure out how to get it. And then you got to do the stuff. And that's true for you. That's true if you're helping anybody else. That making sense? I mean, those same basic things. And yeah, it gets more complicated than that. There's more nuance to that. But those are really the same basic steps for anything. So we're going to kind of go over that in more detail, but that's sort of the setting stage. All of you have had at least one successful experience. I bet you've had more, because if you fail at every advocacy experience, you're probably not around on the planet very long. And you've also had some probably where things haven't worked out the way you wanted to or not at all. That's also true. You've had some failures in advocacy as well. So self-advocacy, stuff didn't turn out. And that's fine. We learn a lot from that as well. So here we go on to the exciting PowerPoint stuff. And hopefully people can see this in a second.
I'm sorry, I still couldn't find it, so I just want the title again, just in case it's somewhere else.
This is Ariane.
Also
I'm
in the
turning on my
chat.
microphone. I don't have it either, but
Okay.
it was with me.
Let's do me a favor. I mean, you don't need it right this second.
Okay.
Let's deal with that on the back end of this.
I
And
got it.
okay, thanks. All right. Where's my share on this thing right now? Working off my laptop only, and that's never fun. All right. Hopefully folks can see that, correct? Yes? We're all good?
You're good,
Okay,
chat.
awesome. All right, here we go. So Carlos, are you going to be with me the whole time?
Yes, sir. Hold on. There's only 9? I thought we had 10. Just kidding.
It's scratched out. There's 10. So just let me, raise your hand. I've got 2 screens. It's really hard for me to pay attention to that, but also you could put questions in chat and we'll try to get to as many of those as possible as we go through. But please, if I don't see you, I'm not ignoring you. I just can't see you. All right. So here's a little thing. Everybody knows what bureaucracies are. When you're trying to help other people get stuff, a lot of times you're dealing with the bureaucracy. That's true. Whatever that alphabet soup of places, if it's DPSS, DHCS, DMH, whatever it is, those are large bureaucracies. And one thing I want to say is that, it does you absolutely no good to be angry at something for being the thing that it was designed to be. Bureaucracies are supposed to be change-resistant organizations on purpose. Now, those are getting tested quite a bit right now, given who's in the Oval Office and what they're doing with executive orders, right? There's a whole bunch of tension right now at the federal level in terms of change at the bureaucratic level. But bureaucracies are supposed to be consistent over time, despite or in spite of who happens to be in elected office. Because bureaucracies are supposed to create consistency over time. So people kind of know what they're dealing with. They know what the rules are. You don't keep shaking up the cart every single time there's somebody new. Trump's testing that like no one's business right now. But thing is recognizing that I need to understand bureaucracies for what they are. And if I keep banging my head because they're not changing in order to accommodate my needs or the specific needs of the person that I'm working with, I'm wasting my time. They kind of don't care because they're not supposed to. Is that making sense? So I got to figure out what the process is, and I got to figure out how I go through it, how I go over it, how I go around it, whatever the case may be. But what I'm not going to do is spend any energy, emotional energy, on getting upset at the thing that's not supposed to change for not changing. I just got to understand how it works to be able to maneuver effectively. And anybody know who that is down below there? In the photo or in the video? Ron Swanson from Parks and Recreation. His whole thing was basically being the consummate bureaucrat, right? I'm not going to change at all. I'm going to do as little as I possibly can. And by the way, there's a lot of folks in those bureaucracies who work really, really, really hard too. So I'm not saying they're like Ron Swanson necessarily. All right, moving on. So what is advocacy, you may ask? Well, it is speaking and acting for change or justice on behalf of oneself or another person or a cause. And that down there, so that's John Lewis, who was going ahead of Martin Luther King in the March on Washington back in 1967. That's tough to open for MLK. And I think John Lewis was like in his early to mid 20s at this time, up on that stage. Pretty amazing. But why did folks, for those folks who know, why did folks go and march on Washington in summer? Which, if anyone's been to DC in the summer, It's steaming.
For change.
For change. What kind of change?
Essentially changed an unjust law that, or at least they felt unjust, to essentially see if it would be considered, if people thought about it more, as to what the time was that we need to progress to a further like a betterment of this law. Like it was written for a reason when it was, but at the same time, it's no longer needed for that.
Okay. Carlos. Thanks, Matthew.
No, yeah, good morning. Yeah, definitely for change. The rules that were written down at one given time, like Matthew mentioned, they did serve maybe a purpose back 100 years ago. But
Okay.
as everybody knows, and we have experience, you and I, we're not the same people we were 5 minutes ago. So things change much change, and those rules that were written at one time no longer apply. Even though
Okay.
some people want to keep them in place, need to basically, unfortunately, convince them otherwise by showing proof. And like this actually only benefits only one side, and we need to be able to make it so that it benefits everybody. That's now.
Okay. So they went there to advocate for a change in the status quo, right? To change the change in laws. Why DC though?
Because that's where all eyes were on at that time. If you would have started with, let's say right now with the current situation, if I'm in El Cajon, nobody would care.
Okay. Let me get some, but Carlos, let me say, why specifically DC, Washington DC? Why go there?
The White House.
Let me ask somebody else. Let me get somebody else involved here, if that's okay. Anyone else? Why DC?
Because it's the United States Capitol.
Right. Well, so who's in that? Who's in the Capitol?
The president.
Who else?
The legislative branch.
Yeah, it's the folks that are making the decision about laws that are there. That's why you go there. Right. I mean, it's got a lot of cool buildings and all that stuff too. And obviously, it's got a great place to meet there on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial and all that. But it's because the people who have the decision-making power happen to be there. You're trying to influence those folks specifically because they're all going to be there. Right. And you know that you're going to get media coverage. That's why you do large rallies. It's because you want to gain the attention of the media. It's not because you necessarily want to have people all agree on. So that helps the rah-rah part of any rally, right? That we're all in this together. But the real reason you're in there is because you want to get the media to show up and be able to influence the people who actually have the power to change laws. Does that make sense? That's why you go through all the pain and trouble of making something like this happen, right? Because you're trying to create change. Second here, boop, moving through. A second, I just had something fun happen. Oh, that's great. Wow. Hold on. More technical fun this morning, Carlos. This is great. All right, here we go.
All right.
So the other thing I will say is that advocacy is the bread and butter of being being in the peer world. This is the day in, day out. Most people, when they're coming looking for help, are looking for you to help them get stuff. Whatever that stuff happens to be. It can be tangible, money, housing, food, whatever. It can also be sort of less tangible. It can be time and attention, because those are also rare commodities, right? If you're advocating or helping someone get some more face time with their psychiatrist, that's a rare commodity, right? They have too many people to see and too little time to see them, that kind of a thing. So you're trying to help that person gain some level of prominence amongst all the other people that person is seeing. Is that making sense for folks? So this is we're generally trying to get something for that person, right? And the whole reason you came into CAPS is because in some ways you were trying to get something for yourself. That's not selfish. If we're not good at self-advocacy, we're probably dead. We're all trying to get our needs met in various ways. Sometimes those are healthy ways, and sometimes they're not so healthy. And sometimes those not so healthy ways also aren't great for other people. But this whole thing about trying to get your needs met is sort of a natural human thing. And if we weren't decent at doing that, we would not be around as a species. That make sense? I'm not going to try to put any value on that. There's just probably better ways of going about getting your needs met than others, for sure. All right. Little discussion time back on you. This is the have you ever portion of this. So have you ever done any of these things? I just want to try to get a couple quick examples because I know we're a little behind on time, not because of you guys, because of my fun, but anybody ever done any of this? Yeah, Desiree, first up.
Yes, I've rallied in protest before because I am part of an organization from the Chicano Park. I'm a
Okay.
Brown Beret. So
Okay.
yes, we do that. We did it with the border, with the children's being locked in the cages. We marched for with the LGBTQ, Black Lives Matter. We work with the Black Panthers. So
Okay.
yes.
So you've done a whole bunch of that for
Yeah.
various sort of, there's probably some common threads between all those groups, right? I'm going to guess there's probably
Yeah.
some oppression, right? Marginalization is a general
Yes.
theme there, right?
Yes.
Probably some poverty mixed in as well, I'm going to guess.
Yes. Yeah, because I am part of the Chicano Park Steering Committee as
Okay.
well. So yeah, we work with different organizations, Unión del Barrio. Yeah.
So do you guys sort of or help other groups organize rallies
Yeah.
or okay, so you're sort of helping with logistics, right? Because
Logistics, yeah, we're mostly there for like security
cool.
reasons too, just in case someone wants to intervene. Like we went against Proud Boys, Trump supporters. So yeah.
Okay. So you've got a lot of experience with this. So I'm going to also guess that one of the biggest things that putting a rally together that you fear is people not showing up.
Yeah.
It's really hard to carry like 40 signs yourself.
Yeah, it is really hard, but we've always had a good show out, especially when our first march to the border was really publicized too.
Okay. So
we were out there.
Talk about that first march. So that was around, I guess, the border wall, probably. Yes.
Yeah, that was the border wall when the kids were in cages.
Great.
When the kids were being separated from families, and they didn't have a voice. We were receiving letters from inside of people saying that how they were being treated, how they can't see their kids. So we had sources from everywhere.
So let me ask you, so that so where was that first rally held? What was the physical location?
At San Ysidro border.
Okay, so it was right at the border, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you could have done that rally someplace else, probably, but why did you do it at the border? I know it sounds like a silly question.
Because the kids in the cages and our people being deported and all the other stuff, the ICE.
Because
physically, that's a location that everybody had picked too.
Okay. So part of that's where the stuff is, that's where the injustice is happening, or at least starts.
Yeah,
right?
that's where it starts. I mean, it's not where it's always at, but it's a source.
Right. So this is like, so location's important too, right? You got to be thinking about this because you're trying to draw attention to that issue, and there's better places to do that than others. There just are, right? I mean, you could have done this in Griffith Park, but that has necessarily nothing to do with it. It's a place where people gather for sure, but not about that issue. A lot of times it'll be around federal buildings or people go to the Capitol, right? Or go to DC. It's easy to meet, it's easy to point to the Capitol. It stands out. It's the thing with a rotunda on it. But the reason you're doing is because the people with power are in there, right? And you're trying to get them to notice what's going on outside.
Yes.
That's the whole point. Also, I'd say with rallies is you actually want opposition to be there because it makes you more interesting. Conflict is interesting for the media, right?
Yeah, it was very interesting. You had a Latina for Trump there, and sometimes they can get a little aggressive, but it is what it is.
Yeah. So I hate to cut you. I'm trying to rush for time. I'm just trying to give the examples. I really appreciate it. But part of this thing is you're trying to draw attention, and conflict draws attention, right? So you definitely want people. Yes, you want people honking in support, but you also really want people flipping you off in opposition. That's part of this. I always tell people, if you haven't had honks for support and middle fingers in opposition, you haven't been to a rally. That's part of it. Obviously. Okay, anybody other examples other than going to rallies? Thanks, Desiree. Other than a rally. Anyone else on these other things? Let me get to Ruth.
Yeah, I've done a ton of medical advocacy, pretty much everything on the list and then some. And I also am in partnership with several organizations that are working on justice reform.
Okay. Give me just to cut to the chase. Give me an example, if you don't mind, around some of that medical advocacy. What was the issue, if you don't mind sharing?
Oh, man, I've done that for like 30 years. So it's basically just like friends, close friends or family members that are not getting the care they need,
Mhm.
whatever that looks like. And
Yeah.
so advocating for them with, the office or clinic, insurance, filing grievances,
Okay.
independent medical reviews, like all
Okay.
that stuff.
So
Yeah.
you've gone to the fact of doing independent medical reviews, right? Which is a thing generally, which is happening probably with their coverage of their insurance company, right? And I think more than likely that that's a situation where they've denied care, and whatever their medical review process was, you're trying to go to a neutral third party and have them review the facts because you're hoping that that will force them to change their mind and provide coverage for whatever the thing is. Is that a fair summary of that?
Yeah, I would say a lot of it is like not necessarily denied care, but delayed care,
Okay.
So like
Yeah. Gotcha.
care
Gotcha.
delayed long enough is
So
no care, basically. So yeah.
So just give me one example. What was the insurance company you were arguing with?
Oh, it's Medi-Cal.
Medi-Cal? Okay, so you basically went through Medi-Cal's process.
Yeah.
Okay. So where did you find out that information?
Just talking to other people, like researching online. I mean, it's
Okay.
a lot of digging, but the basic process is to file a grievance with the insurance. Like here we have geographic managed care plans, so it's like Anthem, Blue Cross, Medi-Cal.
Mm-hmm.
So file a grievance with them. They send a resolution that's bullshit, basically. Sorry. Um, and
Yeah.
then you have to go to the Department of Managed Healthcare, file something with them, and
Okay.
then you can get to the independent medical review. So it's like whole, yeah.
So here's I'm going to talk a little bit. I'm going to get to it right now because I think it's a good point. So here's the secret about this. You cannot be an expert in everything. There's just too much crap to know.
Mhm.
There really is. But what you have to do is become an expert in knowing other experts. I don't have to carry stuff in my head if other people have it in their head and I can get to them, right? So what Ruth has done here is she's exposed herself as an expert in going through the Medi-Cal appeals process around care and treatment. So here's the cool thing. So Ruth, sorry to out you on that one. So there may be other people that gain that experience, and I'm going to guess probably Ruth, and correct me if I'm wrong. You did not grow up and your childhood dream was one day I hope to become an expert in the ins and outs of Medicaid and Medi-Cal. No, that wasn't.
No, it's like
Very-
people are dying or
Yeah.
like in pain for years and something needs to be done. And I have a friend who worked for Medi-Cal policy, so
Oh, wow. So you got a
I
friend on the inside, which also helps. Those people are worth their weight in gold because they can help you maneuver. So a couple others said, wow. So Ruth, you're giving me a whole lot to work with here right up front. So the thing of it is that Ruth fell into this because out of necessity, right? It was just happened to be her day. You probably will never pick the things that you wind up being an expert in. It'll just be the person who was out sick that day. You wound up doing it, then it worked out, then people found out, and then all of a sudden now you're the housing expert. That's just how this stuff happens, right? And you build more and more of your expertise. And that's really cool because Ruth doesn't have to be the housing expert if you are, right? And you don't have to be the Medicaid or Medi-Cal expert because Ruth is. And so if you can trade that information across, plus if Ruth is willing to share the relationship that she has with that person on the inside, that could be helpful to you. But I also have to respect that Ruth may not want to share that relationship because she may be worried that you're going to screw it up. So sometimes you can share, sometimes you don't. That's up to Ruth to figure out. It's her relationship. And I know many of you have been around and you've had experience in doing negotiations with utility companies. You've had some of this experience, right? And some of you have more of it in certain areas than others. When you go work for a place, does anybody here know what a Rolodex is? For those younger folks, it's a primitive information storage device where contacts are kept on basically small recipe cards used in alphabetical order on a rotating thing. Anyways, so what I want to do is I want to make friends when I start at a place with the person who has the fattest Rolodex, either digitally or physically. Because what that represents, it's not the phone numbers, it's the relationships that are inside that. That's what I'm trying to get them to share with me. Because if they'll share those relationships, it's way better for someone to share a relationship with me than it is for me to start cold calling people. That sucks. That's no fun. at all, right? So if they're willing to share, if I'm willing, so all of a sudden now, if they retire or go away and I own that Rolodex figuratively, I become extremely valuable for my organization and for the folks that are coming in for help. Is that making sense? So I'm trying to figure out any way, shape, or form that I can get in there and get to know someone like Ruth, get to know her expertise, or at least have her be in a situation where like, oh, you know what, I'll help you out with this. Okay, so I got to that point a little bit earlier than I thought. All right, let's move on. Thanks, Ruth. So everyone go to Ruth now. All right. All these things examples have a few things in common. One is it's an active process. You actually have to do stuff. And by the way, stuff will happen to you or the person you care about, whether you do anything or not. But if you want to actually make a positive change in it, it means you probably got to do something or they have to do something. There's going to be an outcome. Now, you may not agree with it. Sometimes you may not even know what it is because people don't tell you. So sometimes the art of this is actually trying to figure out, well, was there a decision and what the heck was it? And that you're generally trying to get something for you or for someone else. So for everyone who signed up for this program, you were trying to get something for you, right? Sorry, the cameras, I keep moving around. You're trying to get something for you, right? That's not being selfish. Ultimately, I think you're probably trying to get this for you because you want to be able to help others, correct? So what's selfish about that? And getting stuff for yourself, like I said, we need to get stuff for ourselves anyways, otherwise we're not around very long. All right. So there's 4 principal types of advocacy. One is self-advocacy.
I don't think you do. If you did, I'd have a car. So you know how to take the reservation, you just don't know how to hold the reservation. And that's really the most important part of the reservation. Anybody can just take them.
So hopefully folks could hear that. So what's Jerry trying to get for himself there?
His reservation
For what?
that he made. Is it a plane or where is he going? I don't know where he's going.
car.
Oh, the rental car.
Rental car, right?
Yeah.
So he's going to the rental car desk. It sounds like a silly question. Why?
Because we
Starting
didn't
up.
have that before.
Pardon? Sorry. There are multiple.
Old
What's the
systems
rental car
didn't
desk?
have, sorry, old systems didn't have like an online version, so you had to go physically to someone to do that for you.
True. And even in the age of online stuff, sometimes you physically have to go to get things done. Because you can't get the thing resolved online. It's not doing what it's supposed to do, what you think it should do. But why specifically? There's a lot of counters in the airport. Why specifically the rental car counter?
That's where the problem lies. That's where you can solve it.
That's where they have control over the thing that you want. Right? You can go to somebody, and you probably have to go to the rental car company where you have the reservation. If you rent with Hertz and you go to Dollar, and they're a rental car place and they have cars, but what are they going to tell you?
Wrong place.
Go back to Hertz. It's not our problem, which is true. So even if it looks the same, I've got to go to the right place. I need to go to the place where the locus of responsibility exists. And sometimes that seems really easy to figure out. Other times it's pretty complicated to figure out where the heck do I even have to go to try to get the thing. It's not readily available for me. It's not really obvious. Kurt, you had a question.
I was just gonna comment on that. It's also, if you can't help me physically right here, the manager who's also here, go get them. And you're basically trying to say, I don't want what happened to me to happen to other people.
Yep.
So let's fix this right here and now.
Great. And Kurt, thanks for bringing up the whole manager thing. So let me look around, bring this a little bit early too, but I know no one here is that person. I'm sure of it. But does anybody have probably an uncle who is that kind of person that the minute they walk into a place, they say, give me your manager? Immediately. Don't even let the person help, just straight over their head. Anybody? I got a couple of laughs in there. So here my thing is, don't let that be you. That's an asshole. Sorry, I just called your uncle an asshole. Whatever. Here's the thing that you're not, because the thing that you're not allowing to happen is maybe that person who's not the manager could have helped fix it. You don't know. You never give them a chance, right? They could have actually, you could have not having gone to the manager. And the time that you want to go to the manager is at the invitation of the person that you're interacting with. Because here's the thing. When you go to work for somebody, do you have rules that you have to follow? Do you get to do whatever the hell you want to do? Do you have a boss that you have to answer to? Generally, yes. And so does the person behind the counter. They maybe want to keep their job. So the fact that they're saying no to stuff, they do get to they have to say no to some things. That's the way it goes. And I can't take it personally, right? They're just trying to do the best they can. And most people are trying to do the best they can in whatever they have. If someone invites me to go to their manager, their supervisor, that's great. Now, sometimes they're because they're looking for cover, right? They're trying to say yes, but they don't know if they can say yes, and they don't want to get in trouble for saying yes. So they're trying to get their manager to say yes in case, or at least authorize them to say yes. Is that making sense? Which is wonderful. That's perfect. But sometimes also that manager is going to say no too. I'm still going to thank the person for going to their manager because they didn't necessarily have to do that. Because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to maintain a good relationship with that person who's at the counter. Because I may have to come back to them. And if you're an asshole, pardon my French, they will remember you. If you're super nice, they might remember that you're super nice. I guarantee you, if you're a jackass, they will put that away. And next time you come in, do you think they're more or less likely to help you? Kind of less, right? And maybe you get away with it with that one person at the Hertz counter that one time in some airport that you're never going to go back to. Okay, fine, whatever. But if you're talking about working in the space that we're working in, when you've got to go back and work with the same Social Security office, the person at window number 6, you may have to see them again. And by the way, window number 6 is going to talk to window number 5 and window number 7. They'll remember you. And even though maybe you got that cathartic release, or maybe you think you won that time, you're going to keep losing over the long run. So I need to be thinking about, like, and the thing is, if you were on my team, I used to run a care coordination team many years ago, and you got the reputation of being the person who goes over everyone's head all the time, I don't want you on my team anymore. Because you're making it harder for everyone. That making sense? So it's
Yeah,
like,
Chad, this is
I need to
Ariane
work
Tovis.
with
I have my
people, not
hand up,
against
and I
them.
have a question that pertains to class content.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to take copious notes and really
Mhm.
focus on the material that's going to help us with our exam.
Yeah.
And so this model that you're sharing this morning, is this the model that will be asked about on the state exam, or is this just a model that you're advocating for that, as a standard practice in the industry?
Never had that question before. Well, it's definitely one that I'm advocating for. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing this. How much detail of this is on the exam? I don't know. I didn't make up the exam. And maybe Carlos can figure out what that is. But part of what I guess I'm trying to get to people is recognize, number one, that you are all advocates already before coming into this, to recognize that. And then part of this thing also is to how do you hone your skills over the long run to become better and more effective at what you're doing. And so this is sort of a suggestion or a pathway of doing that. I'm going to get to a few questions here. Like I said, it's a 10-question path. I'm going to try to get to that as soon as possible.
Thank you.
That's probably not a satisfactory answer, but I don't know what's on the exam, to tell you the truth. So, Ruth.
Thanks. Related to like the medical advocacy that I was talking about, like there are times where I've called 10 times and spoken to customer service at insurance and get to the point where I've repeated the same story over and over to every single person, right?
Yep.
And I've definitely gotten to the point where I'm like, you know what? Like, you don't get paid enough to talk to me. Can I please speak with your supervisor? Because I've already called, 10 times in the last 2 days or whatever. So I'd love to hear your feedback on that.
Well, one thing about repeating your story is you get more efficient in repeating it. to get better at it, telling your story, right? Over time. One other thing is you get to enjoy a lot of soft jazz on hold. And it's usually pretty crackly. I will tell you this, that the hold music for Kaiser South and Kaiser North is exactly the same hold music.
Oh yeah, the like across the service, like the medical service, it's the same. So
Yeah. So, right. So yeah, I mean, sometimes it does feel like you're banging your head against the wall. And what you're trying to hope for sometimes in that situation is trying to just get to the right person who knows how to maneuver effectively, differently than the other random person that you got assigned to. Is that making sense?
yeah,
Sometimes people know stuff that other people don't know.
yeah. I've run
Um,
into that too.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I kept my GP, my general practitioner at Kaiser for years and years and years, even though it was impossible to see him because he knew how to pull strings. He
Hmm.
could make stuff happen that no one else could make happen. Then he transferred out of that, no longer my GP, and I'm struggling myself to try and get my care because he used to just be the guy, make this happen and he would. Don't have that person anymore, which is as a care recipient sucks, right? So those relationships change, and I got to try to figure out what the new angle is. And I will tell you with much frustration, I haven't figured out that angle. Uh,
Hmm.
so it's kind of like you're sort of like trying to keep pressing against it until something breaks a little bit, or there's a gap somewhere that you can go through.
Yep. So it's all about relationship. Yeah.
You
Okay.
know, all of this is, it's all, I always thought stuff like I never wanted to go into the sales business. And then I realized, oh crap, I've been in the sales business for 35 years. It's like it really is that. It's sales,
Hmm. Okay.
right? Angelina.
Yeah, I just want to say in my experience in life, I'm a little older, but I will say that 80% of the time when I bring courtesy and I'm genuine, I show actual care for the person I'm
Yep.
talking to, I will say 80% of the time I get a better outcome. And I have had so many people say, you know, you made my day, you made my week, just because I really cared. I really genuinely cared, and then they
Yeah.
go the extra mile. So it doesn't happen, like I said, 20% maybe of
Yeah.
the time I get really the opposite, but 80% of the time I can say I get lucky.
Yeah. Which, by the way, is also sales, Angelina, right? I mean, you're trying to think about, okay, who am I I'm trying to convince somebody, right? And generally, I don't convince people by coming off like a complete jerk. That
Yeah.
rarely ever works. Yeah.
And I think a lot of these people feel used. They feel like numbers. People come at them, they get attacked. It's not even their fault. They don't have the power a bunch of the time, but it's amazing what they will go, the lengths they will go if they feel you're a good person. It's just my experience.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, if I think about like if anyone's ever been in the Social Security office, right? Like no one wants to be there, honestly. Right? There's a whole bunch of people who are upset in the waiting room, sitting in those plastic, ass ischemic chairs forever. The easiest thing in there, someone needs a replacement for their Social Security card. That's like the lightest thing. Most people are there because they didn't get their check or didn't get the money, and they're worried about paying rent and buying food and all that other stuff. So they're in a crappy mood, right? For sure. And then they go up to the window, and if you're behind one of those windows, you're dealing with people who are in crappy moods, who are going to blame you for a bunch of stuff that you don't necessarily have control over from here to forever. I'm surprised anyone wants to take that job. I'm surprised if you aren't jaded within the first week that you work there, right? You may have come in idealistic and like, oh my God, and you keep getting beat up on over time and time again. You, Angelina, coming in that situation can be that bright ray of sunshine in their otherwise very dark and cloudy day, right? They will remember that. I even go so far as sometimes, I would send thank you cards to folks because they never get that. Or I would write a letter back to their supervisor saying what a great job they had done. Even sometimes if I didn't get what I wanted, I would acknowledge the effort because sometimes things don't turn out because you know what? The person you're working with didn't do the right thing, right? They screwed up, right? And they're getting called on it. It's like, oh, okay, that's the way this works. So it's just like I think ingratiating yourself with folks is super, super, super important. And yeah, occasionally, you know what, you'll be nice and whatever, and someone's still going to treat you. That's on them, not you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Agreed.
And does it
Yeah.
take more effort sometimes? Yeah. But usually doing a good job does. So yeah.
Thank you.
Carlos, something burning. So they got to move.
Basically, going off of what Angelina said, yeah, we need to understand we might be the problem sometimes. We are trying to help people, but maybe, like I said, myself, one of my biggest things was like I came back my ride with a very high set of unrealistic expectations of myself and others. I might meet a person that, and I'm expecting them because of what when they come back, like you should know all the answers I'm asking you, not realizing that might be the first day of the job. And yeah, we're out there, like you said, literally being the asshole and expecting to know everything there is to know about everything. Well, that's not possible. Or they might have a death in the family, so not recognizing and validating other people's lives at that time. But you're right, just basically go in there, lower your expectations, be nice to them, and go boils down to the same thing. Treat everybody like you want to be treated, plain and simple.
Well, I'm going to get to this a little bit later too, but I think now's the right time to do it. It's like, look, I can't, if I'm looking at someone and I'm saying, hey, the problem is in you, what's your natural reaction to that? It's defensive, right? You're going to start closing me off and whatever. And so I got to figure out how to take that problem and put it out there somewhere so we can both take a look at it, hopefully objectively, right, with the person that I'm working with. And somehow I got to make that person have a connection back to when they started off as that idealistic person, however many years ago, of wanting to help people. And guess what? Here's a person you can help with this problem, and I want to help you help this person so that we can resolve this. That's a much better place to be than you suck. You that's not going to get you anywhere, right? Even if the person actually objectively sucks, that's still not going to get you anywhere. So yeah, it's like, oh, I need to take that problem and put it out there so that we can look at it sort of dispassionately, right, objectively, and then try to figure out how we can resolve it. So I want to always be trying to help somebody, help the person that we're hopefully both trying to help, I guess. Right. Moving on. So self-advocacy is trying to get stuff for yourself. Individual advocacy, this is the bread and butter I talked about earlier. You are trying to help somebody. Someone's coming to you for some sort of assistance with trying to get something, whatever that thing is. This is the day in, day out work that we do. So I said an example here, accompanying a friend to the housing authority. So I'm going to pick on somebody here. Who should I pick on? Who needs to be picked on? Jonathan, you look down immediately, so I think I'm going to pick on you, Jonathan McGowan. Here we go. So, thank you, Jonathan, for volunteering. So I'm working with Jonathan. We're going to have a busy day, Jonathan. I need to, he's got some housing stuff going on. I need to accompany Jonathan to the local housing authority. What's the best way to refer to Jonathan when we're over at the housing authority? What are the folks at the housing authority probably going to call Jonathan besides Jonathan?
Maybe by Mr. McGowan.
Sure. Okay, that's your name. Still, what else?
By my work title, since I'm a case manager and working with the
You're
housing
coming in there.
authority is
I'm
something I do.
coming in there to try to help you.
I'm getting confused on the role. So what is the role that I am?
So the role that you are is you're coming to me for help. I'm your peer. I'm providing peer support through this process. Right.
Okay, so I'm a client in this role.
Maybe. So are they gonna call you a client? Maybe. Anything else they might refer to you as? Anyone else can answer?
Member.
Yeah, Matthew.
A number.
A patient.
Participant.
Probably not patient so much there. You remember we're in housing land.
Yolanda said consumer in the chat, Chad.
Pardon? Consumer?
Yolanda said consumer.
Yeah, consumer is kind of our own sort of title within the behavioral health space. That's generally not a widely used term out in the world.
Just a number.
Case number.
I did the homework. They referenced them as members.
Okay. Janet.
I was gonna say resident.
Resident, we're getting warmer.
Robin put in the chat tenant.
Yep, tenant. That's generally how that's, remember, we're in housing land, right? Jonathan's still Jonathan, but we're in housing land and they've got different terminology across the board. They also refer to people differently in housing land. So probably a tenant. Even client, they're probably going to figure it out. Patient's a little strange in that environment. They're probably not stupid. They'll probably connect the dots. Okay, Jonathan, we're still super busy. We're going to go over to Social Security now, take care of some stuff over there. How might the folks over in Social Security land refer to Jonathan?
Recipient.
Perhaps. And client might also work.
but there's a specific term that I'm looking for.
Applicant.
Perhaps if he's in that process.
Is it like payee?
Yeah,
Fish.
that's talking their language a little bit. It rhymes with beneficiary.
Beneficiary.
Spot on. Great. Thank you. Yeah, so you're a beneficiary, and that's Social Security speak. I mean, if I said beneficiary over in housing land, they'd probably look at me cross-eyed. Okay, we're going to go over to the hospital. This is an easy one, Jonathan. Who are you at the hospital?
Patient.
Patient. That's just the language. Even though I believe in calling people consumers or members, I'm probably going to cut to the chase and refer to patient because I don't want to have a really long explanation of what consumer means. Right, that's just the language that they're turning to. So here's the thing about just recognizing that the environment that you're in has different rules, traditions, culture, terminology. I need to quickly adapt to that because there's a bit of power that comes in using the word beneficiary in Social Security land. It sort of lets them know that I might actually know stuff, and they're a little less likely to screw with me or the person that I'm working with. That making sense? I'm not trying to like have a power play in here, but it also means that I need to sort of do some homework about where I am and be thoughtful around that because there's a different way of maneuvering in that environment than in a hospital. If I want to get stuff done in a hospital, my best bet, not the doctor, go find the charge nurse. They're the person who makes actually stuff happen, and they can negotiate with the doctor because the doctor's too damn busy, doesn't want to talk to me anyways, and they're the ones that actually make things happen. That making sense? That's the person I want to try to get to because they're super key in making things happen. Yeah, Carlos.
Yeah, just friendly reminder, we need to take a break. So it's a good breaking point within the next few minutes.
Yes, we're all at the breaking point. Just kidding. Okay, moving on. So I just say that it's really important to kind of do your homework and know what that terminology is. It does help a lot. Okay, systems for group advocacy. So if anybody here is talking about rallies, the reason you're coming together, once again, is because you have a common cause and you're trying to make there's some similarity in cause. It doesn't have to be exactly identical. And you're trying to affect change for other folks. And you're doing this because you're trying to group people together. So back with the George Floyd protests a while back, who was the opposition there?
The police?
The police. Yeah, because that's who you're trying to draw attention to, right? Did you get media coverage around that? Yeah, you sure did. Right? There was a point to that. Legal representative advocacy. I know none of you are this. Is probably that same uncle, but the person who jumps to the conclusion that you need to sue the bastards. We're going to sue them. Like, okay, you and what army and how much time do you have? Because sometimes, yeah, going to court's the way to go, but it takes a long time. That person that you're trying to help, they could be long dead by the time the court actually resolves the issue, or we're going to pass legislation. That's the space I work in. It takes a long time, and you're not guaranteed the results, especially now if you think where the Supreme Court is. I don't necessarily want to take stuff that winds up going to the Supreme Court. I'm really worried about what they're going to do with it. So you could actually take something where there's some question and actually firmly make it to the position that's opposite of the one that you want. Right? Most of you, if you're involved in this sort of stuff, you'll know it, and occasionally it's important stuff to get involved in, but it takes a really, really, really long time. It's not any quick fix for anybody you're trying to help right now. Just isn't. All right. So summary quickly here, and we'll get to a break, I promise. No matter what type of advocacy you wind up doing, well-practiced advocacy skills will increase your chances of getting what you want when you want it, and those skills can help you identify, resolve, and eventually prevent problems. So that's the second half. We're going to start to get into those that skill set. This is sort of the preamble to all that, and we should take a break. How long is that break?
We will take a 10-minute break. It is 9:56. Be back ready at 10:06 a.m. Thank you, everyone.
And Carlos, I'm going to 11. This is set up right now. My camera's not in the right sort of spot, so I keep kind of anyway. So not good Zoom etiquette right now on my part, just to let you know. All right, here we go. Cutting back into it. Hopefully that's back up. You should be seeing a blank screen right now. Is that true? Yes. Cool. All right. Away we go. So there are, oops, we just saw that one. Sorry. Next slide. This is it. So Everyone write this down. This is certainly really important. 3 essentials to advocacy. You want to get this. 1 is information. 2 is information. And 3, for those of you ahead of the game, is also, it's information. So information is really, really, really important, but I also want to add this little bit to it too. It needs to be accurate. Inaccurate information gets you in all kinds of trouble. Was it Mark Twain saying it's not what I don't know, it's what I know for sure that ain't so that gets me in trouble. And part of this thing is there's all kinds of information in the world, more information than you've ever wanted, and some of it's even accurate. So if I'm trying to get information about Social Security Administration, what's going on there, I'm going to go to their website and find out, because that's the horse's mouth. Is that making sense? I may get other people's opinions and angles and whatever, and maybe that's useful information, but unless it's coming from the place that has the authority, I can't go back and say, you know what, this user over on Reddit said this, you should follow that. That doesn't work that way. It's you said, or the organization said, right? The entity said that this is the way things are. That's the stuff that you need to know. We good there? So it's like the toughest part. I always tell this to my students. The question isn't anymore about information. It's at your fingertips in ways never ever before. You can find all kinds of stuff. It's being able to sift through all that garbage to get to the good stuff. That's the challenge nowadays. No time for questions. Sorry, we're moving on. All right. Oh, you already had your break, so never mind. Hopefully you did some of those things. Cool. All right, here we go. It used to be 9 questions that I had, and for years and years and years, I dared someone to come up with a 10th, and several months ago, someone finally did. So it's now 10 questions to help guide you, which sounds way better. Here you go. Question number 1. What do we want? What does the person want? This helps you, well, number 1, stay focused on the prize. And if you don't know what you want, how the heck are you going to get it? Now, here's the thing. The most important thing about question number 1 is question number 1. Like, a lot of new advocates believe they need to start doing something first. And there's a sense of urgency many times when people come to us. And that sense of urgency isn't necessarily because they know what they want. What they know is they don't want what they have. And that's different than knowing what you want. And I can understand it, and I can understand the emotions around that stuff, and I want to sit with somebody and help them process through all that. That's great. And sometimes people actually do know what they want, and that's great. Then this step doesn't take very long. Other times this can take days, weeks, sometimes months for someone to figure out what they want. But how do I move forward without knowing this? Because if I move forward in the wrong direction, I might actually screw things up. I might make it more difficult, even though I'm trying my best to make it better. Or I could get the thing, or we could get the thing, and the person look at me and go, like, I don't want that. That sucks. That was a waste of time and energy, right? So I'm going to spend as much time as necessary to get a solid answer to this question. That make it, and recognize that sometimes people come to me, this false sense of urgency. I mean, look at this thing. If someone's actually being evicted, are they any more evicted an hour from now? They're just as evicted tomorrow too. I'm not trying to make their problem small or anything, but it's like, I don't have, if they're really evicted, I've got some time here. I don't have to do something this minute, honestly. So I can kind of sit around and it's like, what's behind this eviction? Is it because you don't want to live there anymore? Okay, well, that's one way to do it. But there's probably better ways, right? If I make the assumption that the person wants to stay and I fight really hard at the end, they go, I didn't want to stay there. That's why I did the eviction. That's kind of dumb. So then I would train my efforts like, I wanted to leave this apartment. Okay, well, there's a way better way of doing this. It's called giving notice. Unless your objective was to make it really, really difficult to find your next place to live. If that is, then this was a great way to do that. Probably not. Is that making sense? So it's like those are 2 completely different pathways. And I only know which pathway to take is if I know what the person wants and they're able to articulate that for me. There's another important thing too. If someone comes to me really upset that they're being evicted, maybe what's the first question I should ask?
What
Why
led,
did, pardon?
just like what led to the eviction? Was it like, back rent that they haven't paid? Just trying to assess the person, what they
Yeah.
got into that situation.
Right. So you're trying to set the stage for some kind of advocacy. So you're trying to get some background facts, which is fine. But there's actually a more basic question that comes before that.
What about where are you staying tonight?
Okay. Trying to immediately, I mean, if they're being evicted, they're probably still able to stay there. Right. They don't
Potentially, how
necessarily have
long
to
do
have
they
their
have
place
until
permitted.
they're actually evicted?
Pardon?
How long do they have until they are actually
Okay. So
evicted?
what's the timeline on this?
Yeah.
That's important information to get because usually people don't come to us the first day or the first hour of anything that's happening. Usually it's like, the last minute, and it's usually on a Friday afternoon at about 4:30. That's how those play out. But what's the question before that? Even like, yeah, I'm trying to get to something. I'm going to just go to it.
Do you still want to live there?
That's good.
Yeah.
Why?
So here's a more basic question. How do you know? Because it's going to be pretty obvious. There's going to be a nice letter on your door for all your neighbors to see, kind of a scarlet letter up there, right? It's going to be pretty damn obvious. And the reason I say this, though, is I've had people come to me saying I'm being evicted. And I said, you know what? Can I see the eviction notice? And they come back to me, it's a gas shutoff notice. That's not eviction. I mean, it's not nice and it's got exclamation points and it's a bold red font and it's kind of, but here, one thing is, it's not an eviction notice. It's a gas shutoff notice. It's a completely different thing. They're not under threat for losing their place. They're under threat for not having hot water. That's different. That sucks, but it's not an eviction. And if I go calling up the landlord about a gas shutoff notice or an electric shutoff notice, I'm calling the wrong person. I'm just pissing off the landlord. Is that making sense? I'm actually making things worse, not better. Then it's like, oh, okay, well, then there's a whole different approach for dealing with the utility company and getting them to maintain stuff, right? We got to have a different angle. Obviously, we've got to talk to that utility company, not the landlord. Is that making? I don't even want the landlord to know about this, to tell you the truth. I just want to fix it with Southern California Gas, whoever I have to deal with. Is that making sense? So I want to have that privilege. It's not because I don't believe the person or people think are trying to lie to me. It's just I know some people get confused sometimes about what's actually going on. And once again, I'm trying to get to the information and make sure it's accurate. Because they gave me information, it just wasn't accurate. So I got to kind of settle this thing down. So sometimes I got to go that basic with folks. So once again, number one, what do you want?
Great information.
Two. So who can give it to us? Who is the responsible party, right? In the Jerry Seinfeld's excerpt, it was the rental car company because he wanted a rental car. That's the rental car company he made the reservation with. That's the place that was not actually giving him what he was supposed to get. So he went there. They were responsible for the rental car, not Hertz, not somebody else, not the airlines, not at some other airport. He needed to get a car at that airport. He went to that counter. So pretty obvious. All you have to do is follow the logos, right? But sometimes it can be way more difficult to figure out who the heck's responsible for this issue and who I need to go to. Because ultimately, I am trying to figure out, who has the authority here to say yes or no to stuff. If I don't figure that out, I'm never going to get the thing fixed. So, quick question for y'all. If the person I'm working with is having a problem with their Medi-Cal, where do we go? Anyone?
Medi-Cal.
County building.
No.
Human Services Agency.
Who said that?
Me, Julius.
No, Julius. I think you're on the other screen. Okay. So tell me a little bit more about that, Julius.
Oh, because I've done it before. I've taken people to either sign up for Medi-Cal or some sort of benefit,
Okay. So you got some experience. By the way, you're outing yourself, Julius, to everybody here on the Zoom about this. As potentially being an expert in this area. So okay, so you went to was it Department of Public Social Services?
Yes, I believe so. It was just called HSA in Los Banos. I took someone.
Okay, Los Banos. Okay, so that's a county office, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so here's the thing. So my understanding is that Medi-Cal or Medicaid, as it's called across the U.S., we put Cal on everything in California because we love ourselves, is that it is a state-federal partnership, right? You got CMS at the federal level who's under Department of Health and Human Services, and you've got Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services. Why there's not two M's in that, I'll never know. I've even asked them, and they don't know. And then that's with DHCS, which is the state Medicaid authority. Every state has one. It happens to be Department of Healthcare Services in California, but that's state and federal. How in the heck am I winding up at a county office dealing with something that's a state federal issue ultimately?
It has its own entity, correct?
Well, no, I mean I mean, this is Department of Public Social Services. You're going there to deal with this thing that we call Medi-Cal. Why the county?
In California, the counties have jurisdiction and the state oversees the counties and provides
Yeah.
recommendations usually.
So that's true when it comes to behavioral health services, but not physical health services. So there's a separation
Because they
here.
have the authority to fix it.
Yes, they have the responsibility and some authority. They don't have all the authority. So, I mean, you're right, absolutely, Julius. The smart ass answer is because that's just the way it is.
It has a partnership, correct? A partnership.
Correct. So here's the funky thing, because I can see somebody actually saying, hey, we should go over to the Social Security office because I got my Medi-Cal after I applied for SSI, which is one way to get it, right? And I turned my stuff over at Social Security, which is a federal thing, not a state thing. And the reality of how this whole works is that when I submit an SSI thing to SSA, Social Security Administration, it is federal, but in California, they wind up sending it to the State of California Disability Evaluation Division, who actually looks at that paperwork, and they give the thumbs up or thumbs down on the disability. They send that information to the feds, Social Security Administration, and then they give me SSI or SSDI, depending on if I get SSDI, then I have to have 40 quarters of gainful activity, substantial gainful activity, which is a number that is changed over time based on inflation, whatever, right? And then they also notify DHCS, which is in fact the state Medi-Cal authority or the Medicaid authority, that I should qualify for what's called zero share of cost Medicaid. So why wouldn't I go back there? Because if I went to the Social Security office about my Medicaid problem, what are they going to say to me?
Can't help you.
Can't help you. You're in the wrong spot. Even though in some ways it makes absolute sense, given the person's pathway to get the Medicaid, that they would go to the place that they initially applied. It's just not the way it is. This is far more nuanced than going to the gas company, right? But the end result is you're still trying to get to the people who can make a decision. And in this case, Julius, it's the fact that the State Department of Healthcare Services, which is an existing organization that is the state Medicaid authority. I happen to be traveling right now and I'm in Sacramento. And in Sacramento, there are two very large buildings. There's an entire building from DHCS that's just for Medicaid. I happen to know the person who directs state Medicaid, a guy named Tyler Sadwith. If I went to him regarding this problem, he's still going to send me back down to my local office in LA for the Department of Public Social Services because they're under agreement, under contract to basically be the field office for the Department of Healthcare Services when it comes to issues around Medicaid. And that's just the way it happens to be here. That making sense? So I could spend all the time in the world coming up, pay for the airfare, show up at the DHCS office in Sacramento, and they're still going to tell me, you know what? Why did you come up here from Long Beach? You should have stuck around back in LA. So that's the much more complicated pathway, but I'm still trying to get to the place that has responsibility and authority. It's just sometimes I really have to think about where that is. And once again, that's just information. That making sense? And I'm trying to get to accurate information. Otherwise, I wind up spinning my wheels and wasting my time. Hold on a second here. Moving around. Boom. All right, 3. So why should they care? What do they need to hear? Like, what's my sales pitch? Honestly, like I mentioned the Social Security office earlier. That office is filled. All those chairs are filled with people who have problems. I'm not unique. Anyway, so why should they care? What do they need to hear? So I'm going to, I don't want to walk into these situations or I'll pick up a phone or something else like that without figuring out what the hell I'm going to say first. Like, I really want to get my sales pitch down. I think, Ruth, you had this experience of like, your story to the people you're talking with probably got more condensed over time. right? You got better at telling it. And unfortunately, that's a sucky way to have to get to better at telling your story. But you were trying to get to a solid sales pitch, right? And part of this thing is you were trying to get to figure out why they should give a damn about whatever's happening to you. Because they've got that number, that person, whoever, that's all they get a bunch of yous all day long. Right? What makes you so special, Ruth? Right? It's that kind of a thing. Like, why should they even give a damn? Right? So let's look at something like the gas company. And let's say get the person who got the gas shutoff notice. What ultimately does the gas company want to do? Why should they care?
They just want to get paid.
Pardon?
They just want to get paid.
They just want to get paid. They want to sell gas. That's the whole reason for their existence, right? If they don't sell gas to people, there's no need for a gas company. So at the end of the day, they want to sell their product and they want people to pay for it. That's pretty simple. So they should care. They want to have this person pay. It's not like they're in the business of shutting off gas because it gives them their jollies that way. They don't want to do that. It's a giant pain in the ass. They've usually got to send someone out with a wrench versus the phone company. They just press a button and you're out. So by the way, if you haven't paid your utilities, pay the gas company last. Just throwing it out there. It takes them more effort. But here's the thing is they ultimately want to get paid. So they just want to know whether or not this person gets this. So then this is how you set up a payment plan because they're hoping they're going to get paid eventually, right? But if this person goes through and does this 5, 6, or 7 times, eventually the gas company is going to go, you know what? I don't need you that bad. So most times they have an incentive, right, to sell you the thing that they're trying to sell. Otherwise, there's no reason for them being around. Right? If you go into the return desk at some department store, like no one does that anymore anyways, but they want to keep you as a customer ultimately, right? When that restaurant comps you the free dessert because things got screwed up because they want you to come back. And you know what they also want to do? They want you to tell everybody else, how awesome they are and how much they actually appreciate their customers because they're trying to get you to be their good advertisement versus saying that place sucks, never go there. So you have a little bit of leverage here with folks is that ultimately they're trying to figure out. So it's like, it's always trying to get to what is that thing? Think of them as the customer in certain ways. Like, what do you need to get to them to get to the yes that you're trying to get to? And to know that, you got to kind of rehearse. You got to sort of figure out the angles before you go running in there or screaming to say, I need to see your supervisor because you're upset or the person's upset. That's not very effective advocacy. So you got to kind of take the pause that refreshes and figure out what the hell it is that you're trying to accomplish here and what specifically you need to say and who you need to say it and how you need to say it or write it or type it or whatever it is the way in there to make it work. That making sense? And certainly we have less face-to-face time nowadays than we used to. There's a level of convenience. You can get more stuff done over the magical internet machine than you could ever before, for sure. But you still got to figure out how to do it. And if I can do stuff over the phone or if I can do stuff via email, I'm going to do that because it's more efficient for my time and more efficient for the person I'm trying to help generally. But there may come a time when you're going to have to go sit in those seats somewhere at the DMV, at the Social Security office, wherever it happens, Department of Public Social Services, Julius, that you're going to have to go sit there and think about what the process is for getting in there, not taking a backpack, probably can't bring your dog, probably can't bring the kids, probably can't, right? It's a much bigger pain in the butt to go in physically anywhere by and large, but sometimes that's the only way you're going to get what you want. And there's a different strategy when you're dealing face to face than when you're making a phone call slightly and certainly writing a letter. I got a hand up. I saw back on the other. Yeah, Angelina.
Yeah, I was just going to say that if you do get to the point where you need to write, it's just amazing what having a paper trail can do. They start to get nervous. So if you've written a few emails, even if they're short, because yes, so that's all.
Great point, Angelina. Yeah, you want to start documenting these things.
Yeah.
Because then you got a fixed timeline. You can go back and I mean, not necessarily in a mean way, but just say, hey, I've already spoken to this person. That way you have less of a chance of getting on the revolving wheel at one level. You can go up to the next level that you need to do. Also getting good at business correspondence. No one wants to read 15 pages of anything you have to say. I just want to throw that out there. like 3 paragraphs and out, like make it concise, get in there. And the great thing here about this too is that I bet you wherever you work, someone else has written a letter doing something similar to the thing that you're trying to make happen. And so I want someone else's to like, it's way different, like grabbing somebody else's letter and like adjusting it than it is like starting from scratch. That sucks. It's like cold calling almost. No, it doesn't feel good. So if I can, this is with the person with the Rolodex, they probably have a whole bunch of letters too somewhere they might be willing to share. Right. And then if you do write the ultimate letter, that's really awesome. Well, then share that with other people too, kind of spread the joy. That making sense? So this is like thinking about how do I get to my points very, very quickly. 3 paragraphs and out, by and large. 4. So, whom do they need to hear it, or more grammatically correct, from whom do they need to hear? You? Maybe. Their boss. This is the whole thing about going over people's heads. Don't start there. The doctor? Yeah, sometimes. But generally, it's the person. I need to, when I'm advocating for someone, generally when I'm advocating, they need to be in close proximity to me. It's their life, not mine. If I wind up going to the Social Security office and I'm in here and I say, and who are you here? You know, I'm here trying to deal with an issue for Joshua. What's their first question going to be?
Where's Joshua?
Are you Joshua? And the second question is, if I say no, where is Joshua?
Do you have permission to speak to me?
Right. And generally you will know when you have that power because a whole bunch of paperwork shows up around that. So it's safe to assume you do not have that ability. So I'm going to need Joshua to come with me to Social Security. And is it more complicated for me and Joshua to be at Social Security? Yeah, sure is. Because now I got to worry about Joshua there too. And maybe Joshua doesn't like to sit around, or guaranteed if Joshua smokes, I'm not saying you do, they're going to wait till he goes outside to smoke and then they're going to call his number. I think there's a person paid just to do that. So it's like, or if I'm thinking of someone like he's dealing with diabetes, I got to think about blood sugar because they want to bring food in. There's all this other stuff. You think about trying to go to the DPSS office. If I'm working with someone who's unhoused, they can't bring all their stuff with them. They're not going to let them in with it. So who's going to watch it? How are we going to, does that make sense? It gets more complicated, but I got to think about if ultimately I have to do that. But even if I'm on the phone, I don't want to get in a habit of lying and saying I'm Joshua because I'm not. That's a lie. Not good. And even though sometimes it may seem more effective in the moment, eventually those lies are going to catch up with you. Also, a saying attributed to Mark Twain, whether or not it's true or not, is that you never have to remember the truth, but you have to remember every lie you've ever told. So this builds up. Also, if you get a reputation as a liar, it's really, really, really hard to ever overcome that. You don't have multiple millions of dollars to engage in a public relations campaign like Exxon did after they killed a whole bunch of sea otters in Alaska, saying that we're the friend of the sea otters. You don't have that kind of money. That Megan? So it's just don't, even though sometimes it's like, oh God, I could just say yes to this and I fix this. Don't, if it's no, if the answer is no. Not a good habit. Sometimes there's a doctor, sometimes this is just information once again, like for instance, on an SSI application, I used to supervise a program that did SS advocacy for folks who were applying for SSI. So I got to know SSI really, really well. That whole application process, guaranteed when I was growing up, I never dreamt of that. Astronaut or expert in SSA or SSI, not that thing. I just happened to, by luck, happen to have that. And I got pretty good at actually filling out that paperwork through osmosis. But even though I'm an MSW, I couldn't sign it. It had to be signed by someone who could follow their name with the initials MD or PhD because those are the rules. That's just information. If I signed it MSW, even if it was the best application of all time, they would reject it just based on that. So I'd fill it out and then go find somebody with an MD or a PhD to sign it because that's what I needed to do, even though it was a pain in the butt and didn't make a lot of sense to me. Okay, how do we get them to hear it? What's the best way of making this happen? Personal visit sometimes, but this is takes the most effort, and I don't want to go there literally unless I have to. Phone call. So you will, and I think once again, who was my victim on wait, whoops. Sorry, pressing the wrong button. I gotta go back to my other screen here. I'm terrible with names. So sorry. Who had all the fun? Was it Ruth? Who was having all the fun with healthcare? So Ruth got very experienced listening to hold music. She's also probably a huge fan of phone trees. that always wants you to wait to listen to all the options because the options have changed. And then you wait and go, the options have not changed since the last time. You're a liar. You just got to get used to phone trees. Every once in a while, if it's a brand new phone tree for me, I will hit 0 just to see what happens. Because sometimes you get a real person. Sometimes the thing hangs up on you. Well, like, oh, well, then 0 doesn't work. Then you will sometimes get a person who's very surprised that they're somehow speaking to a live person. I've had that happen. Like, oh, how did you sneak through our system? That kind of a thing. But I'm going to try to run with it when I get that. So phone calls, waiting on hold. Thank God there are speaker buttons for phones, so you can actually, put that in the background and get some other stuff to do. Here's the other thing: is that if you're working with a person and they're not willing to sit on hold for very long at all, then maybe you need to ask them whether they actually want this thing or not. Because if they're not putting any effort at all into this, including listening to like crackly smooth jazz for a while, then maybe I need to revisit that and go back to question number 1. That may be an indication. Like I said, email, letter, that we can do more and more stuff over the internet all the time. If there was one silver lining to the whole COVID thing, is it forced a lot of bureaucracies to figure out different ways of doing business that made it easier, and some of those places kept some of those things. So also just recognize that information changes over time. And I will say, for anyone who's been paying attention going on at the federal level, there was a really big federal bill, the big beautiful bill, or whatever you want to call it, that happened, that is going to have profound impacts on folks who get SNAP, on folks who get Medicaid and Medi-Cal, and what they have to do to be able to maintain those benefits. And so you are entering a place where you've got systems that are going to have to try to figure out how to deal with this. And they're going to fumble it a little bit. And absolutely key in all this is having someone and there's not a whole lot of detailed information yet, right? There's just some overviews about there, but there's a big difference between having to prove eligibility once a year and twice a year. For those folks that don't qualify under disability, how do you qualify for the work stuff through volunteer? Like that's paperwork. What does that look like? So I think for you're entering this place where you're probably going to be spending a bunch of time helping people navigate however those federal changes wind up percolating down. Is that making sense? And I can't tell you exactly how that's going to happen. All I know is that, my members are looking for information around that right now because they recognize how important it is. And I'm searching for it. I know it's not there yet because you're not probably going to get the detail for, 5 to 6 months from the feds about exactly how do you prove up disability. I don't know. Probably if you're on SSI, that's one way, but there's probably other ways. And how's California going to interpret that? How's it going to play out in the paperwork? How's it going to be? So there's a whole bunch of stuff, like assumptions that I have right now about how the way the world works that aren't going to be true in a year. Just like for anybody who went through that wonderful COVID experience, right? There's a whole bunch of things that you thought about how the way the world worked until it didn't. And then you had to figure out what COVID was and what COVID meant, while other people were figuring out what that meant. And that changed over time, multiple times within the period of that first year for sure, because no one knew, and you get conflicting information from different sources. Who do you believe? How do you do this, right? So that was like, talk about shaking up the snow globe of your reality, right? And we're facing that again with whatever the Fed's done. So just say it's interesting times, I guess, is the curse. Skywriting, not a good joke. All right, moving on. 6. What do you have? What kind of documents do you have? Sort of knowledge, political capital. Sometimes you're doing the legislative stuff. Connections, like Ruth knowing somebody right on the inside. That's a connection. Those are important. Documents are also important. Keeping a hold of stuff. Social Security is notorious for sending 3 copies of supposedly the same thing. 2 are identical and one's a little bit different. I don't know why they like to mess with people's heads. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get the folks I'm working with to be really good at, number one, sometimes they move around a lot. So sending in a change of address all the time takes about 10 seconds. But how's that mail going to find you if you don't tell the post office? And sometimes some important stuff still comes through the mail. Like the notice on that Section 8 list that you've been on for 15 years. And then they send a little card saying, send this back in within 30 days, otherwise you're dropped off the list. That card will not find you if you haven't told the post office where you are. And then you're dropped off the list and you go back to the end. That would suck. That making sense? So like just thinking about change of address. The other thing is coming up with just saving your documents. And it doesn't have to be a super fancy thing. A box will work. It's just that box needs to come with you when you move. And you kind of put a stuff, you don't even have to file stuff in that box. If you know it's in there, it doesn't take that long to go through a stack that's that high. Let's go find it. Is that making, at least you know it's there. So getting in the habit of doing that. And I've already some documentation also in terms of who you talk to, sort of what the progression is, dates, times, that kind of thing is really, really helpful. It helps you, like I said, get out from spinning around consistently in that lower level. You can kind of hopefully try to elevate it. I can't get to 7 unless I've done 6 because I need to figure out sometimes what I need. Sometimes I might need an expert. Sometimes I need documents. Here's the thing is you can't get anything done anymore without a government issued photo ID. Generally, it's a driver's license or a California ID. It could be a passport, whatever. You will spend, and maybe some of you figured this out, you will spend an inordinate amount of time helping people acquire and retain government issued photo ID. People lose shit all the time. Or stuff gets stolen or whatever that is, especially if you're working for folks who are unhoused. They thought everything was safe and they come back and their tent got cleared. Just saw that happen yesterday up in here in Sacramento. They did a full clearing of a camp. What do you need to be able to get a driver's license?
Birth certificate.
Birth certificate. Yeah.
Social Security.
So you need documents to get documents. How many of you have a birth certificate? And I mean, actually know where it is, can go get it, not with your aunt 4 states over, right? Good. Because when you need your birth certificate, you needed it yesterday. That's generally the way this works, right? Social Security card also pretty important to have, right? I think you can get 8 of them for free or whatever. I don't even think you have to go in anymore to get a Social Security card. I think you can do that one online. I mean, I can certainly make an appointment with the DMV online, right? And you can choose different DMVs if you live in an urban area like LA. There's a bunch of different ones. So sometimes if it doesn't work, look for you get an appointment sooner someplace else, or it's more convenient, whatever it happens to be. But helping people like hold on to and get to birth certificates. Everybody know the process to get their birth certificate? Okay. Right. How was it? 24, $32, something like that? I can't remember how much it is nowadays. Also, it's perfectly legal to have both a California driver's license and a California ID simultaneously. Because now I've got 2 IDs. If I have a passport, which is more expensive, I have 3. I also generally lie to the DMV and say I lost my California ID, even though I have one. So I have a backup California ID because I have lost 3 at the same time. And I had to fly using my Disneyland annual pass, which they actually took, which is really scary and really weird. But the person at TSA said those are harder to duplicate than driver's licenses, which also really scared me. I don't recommend doing that, and I can't afford that anyways. And my kid's 27 years old now, so I don't have that. But I've been there before, so I have 4 IDs. Because once again, when I need that photo ID, I needed it yesterday, generally, right? So how do I set that stage? And sometimes it's not easy to get the birth certificate. Sometimes people don't know where they were born. And it's like, oh, okay, planet Earth, not Antarctica, go. I once had a person I was working with, their birth certificate was in Iran. That's where it was. How the hell do you get that? Well, we just happened to have someone who worked for us who was going back to visit family there, and he was nice enough to spend an entire day at the public records department or whatever in Tehran and get that birth certificate for us somehow, some way. And when that came back to us, it stayed in our safe because we knew we were never going to get that back again. That's a more extreme version of it. But yeah, sometimes it can be tougher than you think. It always takes longer than you think. So getting used to that. And once again, having those documents, having those letters, once again, the whole box thing about and change of address is important for this as well. All right. How do you begin? So the most important part of this is that this is question number 8 and not question number 1. This is where most rookie advocates make the mistake. Once again, they get this false sense of urgency that I have to do something right now. So they start doing stuff before actually knowing what it is they should do. And you might get lucky and guess right, but you also might not. So, I think we have this thing like, I want to make things happen. And here's the thing, I'm going to make an accusation. I usually make it a little bit earlier in this presentation. Is that all of you here have an overactive helping gene? It's not a bad thing. It's better than having a overly active hurting gene, but you definitely want to, does anyone here like to see people in emotional pain? Probably not. Some of that wanting to fix it is because it's uncomfortable for you. Like, I want you to feel better right now because then you'll start doing this or stop doing that and it'll make me feel better. But I have to resist that and sit with people sometimes through their pain to get to some of these answers rather than jumping to action because someone's feeling like I need to do something right now. But sitting down and getting the information and asking the question about what you want is actually doing something. And I will also say that sometimes in the process of advocacy, doing nothing is the thing that you should be doing because you got to wait. So that's not abandonment. That's not being absent-minded. It's purposely not doing anything right now because it's the right thing to do. It just happens to be nothing. Just blow people's minds right now this time of the day. That's different than just throwing up your hands and giving up. That's not giving up. It's recognizing this is where we are in this process. And I'm not going to know that unless I go back and know what the person wants and then figure out what that process is. Also, so by the time I get to question number 8 here, how do we begin? This is where I start actually building up that who does what list. My job, honestly, as a good advocate, is to get as much of the to-dos on the person asking me for help's list, side of the list. If it all winds up on my side, I'm going to question whether or not this person actually wants this or not. Because if you really want the thing, you should be willing to do something for it. I mean, at the bare minimum, you should go dig through your closet for the documents. What the hell am I doing that for you? You should wait on hold. You should like that make it if you won't show up for appointments, that kind of a thing. I may have to actually at this point go all the way back to question number 1 and say, hey, do you really want this? Because sometimes people change their mind or they recognize how much stuff they have to go through and the juice isn't worth the squeeze to them and they change their mind and say, I want something else. Is that making sense? And by the way, I still haven't done anything yet. I'm trying to figure this out. Also, I can start laying out what the sequence is. What's the 1, 2, 3, 4 of this process? Because sometimes if I do 5 before 1, I'm screwing everything up. So I got to think about it. And you had a process getting into CAPS. There was a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, that you had to go in that sequence. Even if you did everything correctly, but if you did it out of sequence, it wouldn't have worked. Once again, that's just information. Number 9, how will you know if it's working? What are the timelines? What are the existing procedural guidelines? What are your gut feelings? The more and more you do this, you get a sense for how long it should take. Sometimes you can actually see it in the rules and regulations. Like, we will notify the beneficiary within 45 days of the determination. That's written down somewhere. Sometimes you recognize that certain offices work faster than others. Just because they're, supposedly the same office doesn't mean that they're actually the same office. There are some DMVs that operate better than others, even though they're all the DMV. Right. So I'm going to try to be efficient and be selective in the places that I go because my time is valuable. And by the way, so is the person that I'm working with. They've got other stuff to do too. Also, I'm going to try to think about what's the landscape, right? My expectations in terms of turnaround time for certain things, I had to completely throw out the window when COVID happened. There was no usual anymore. People were on furloughs. People were trying to figure out. So, that 45 days turned into 90 or 180 days. Stuff got lost. And I'm saying this right now in advance of some of the stuff that's coming down from the feds. That's going to scramble a lot of people's expectations about how stuff's going to happen. Places that local Department of Public Social Services, that's the Medi-Cal place that you go to sometimes prove up to make sure that you still get Medi-Cal, they're going to get completely overwhelmed. there's got a tsunami of responsibility is coming their way, and they're not going to have the ability to handle all of it, which tells me that my role now is I have to get much better at thinking about what that means for the person that I'm working with and how I can spend some time to facilitate it and make this easier for the folks that are going to be overwhelmed. That's going to give a better chance for the person that I care about working with to actually get their needs met. So I think all organizations right now, I mean, for a number of years now, we've not really had to think about the eligibility thing around Medicaid or Medi-Cal all that much because it was easy to qualify under something. Now it's really going to matter how you qualify and what you have to do. And I can't tell you exactly what that looks like. All I know is it's going to be really, really, really different here in a year or two. So I think that's going to be a huge need for folks. So like I said, any of my existing timelines or gut feelings are kind of useless in that environment. And I'll develop new ones as I get more information. Number 10, the new question, take time to reflect. I can't believe I didn't have this on for 20 years. What worked and what didn't? What can we learn from this experience? The only true failure is the failure that you fail to learn anything from. And sometimes you don't get what you want. So I don't make people a bunch of promises. I don't, because I can't actually guarantee to hold them. I don't know for sure that this thing is going to happen because I don't have ownership over it. And what do broken promises do for relationships? Are they positive or negative?
They can really corrupt the trust, any trust that you've built, and potentially destroy the relationship totally.
Yep. So here's the thing is I don't want to put that out there. I mean, I can make a couple of promises and generally hold on to them is that I care, I give a damn. Hopefully I need to keep doing that and I'll listen. Which, by the way, I have to do those two things every single day anyways in order to be useful. Those I can show up. Are there days I care more than others? Probably. Are there days I'm a better listener than others? Absolutely. But I'm trying to be my best at both of those all the time and I let everything else happen, but I can't make promises outside of that because I can't keep them. I'm not in charge of them. I don't want to take responsibility for things over which I have absolutely no authority. That's a terrible place to be. And you have a situation where you have zero responsibility and have all the authority. That's called vacation. There's some mix, right? In that. And I need to figure that out.
Chad, I believe you have a question on Helena.
Yeah, sure.
Hi.
Yeah.
I just really wanted to know what motivated you to get into this work, if it's okay to ask. So what motivated you to get into this work? How did you end up here? That was my question. If it's okay, it's a good time.
I hate hypocrisy, and I don't like bullies.
Okay.
And you know, I think a lot of times folks that are sort of in disenfranchised position experience those two things way more than others. And I think that folks that have been labeled with a serious mental illness, whatever the hell that is, it's one of the few groups out there where you can continue to be a bully and be a hypocrite and still get away with it. Although we're seeing this happen more and more with other groups again, unfortunately. Wow. Thanks, Trump. But I mean, it's just, there just seem to be, you know, I hate social injustice. And this is one group of folks who get to experience a lot of it. There's other people who do too, but this is the one that kind of spoke to me the most, I guess. Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect. Appreciate it very much.
Kurt.
Hey, I just wanted to say that for me, it's kind of this last one, number 10, what worked, what didn't. It reminds me of when I've had to call customer service to a place and you have to press 4 the first time, then 7 the next time, then 8. And I remember writing that down because I couldn't wait long enough for them to get on. So I was like, okay, next time I call, I know which buttons to push. And it makes me think before I, because I'm learning now, but it would be a good idea if this helps me or anybody else to go through the process of getting your ID, where your birth certificate, having a list of how to get that before a client comes and asks you how to do it.
Well, I used to do this. I used to do this to my students all the time. I would force them as one of their projects. I go down and I would send them to different places, go down to the Department of Rehab, try to get a job, help through them, go to DPSS, apply for food stamps or SNAP, right? just to get them to have that feel of what it's like to actually walk into that building, what it's like to go through a metal detector, to sit in those seats for a long time with a whole bunch of kids running around screaming, looking at the only tube TVs left in the world that are up there, right, with colored tape that almost feels like prison kind of a thing. Just to know what that's like, because that gives you a better idea of what the gauntlet that the person has to go through to get it.
Right. And I know I wouldn't be, I only want to know for my own, I shouldn't be telling them how and what to do. But I've taught music before as a guitarist, and there's a saying that you only have to be one session ahead of your student. And so I don't want to be that way. I want to know the entire process first.
I use that same thing for teaching. I'm one chapter ahead.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. All right. Moving through here. No time for questions because we're running out of time. I want to get into this next deal here. The 3 P's of effective advocacy: politeness, patience, and persistence. On the politeness side of this thing, understand your target. They have limitations. They have rules. They have bosses. They've only got so much time in their day. Also, here's a trick. What's the best time to go into Social Security if you have to?
Early morning.
Middle of the month, middle of the week, and try to figure out where they close the doors at 4:30 or 5, because you want to get in there right before they close the doors, because if they leave at 5, everyone's getting out at 5, including you. Making sense? You never want to go there the first of the month unless you really, really hate yourself. You're not going to get anything done. And you're lining up out in front with everybody early. What are you doing? What a waste. You like lines that much? Really, it's how do you slip in there? And every place has got their own kind of way of doing that, but that's understanding your target, right? And then once again, that's information. Come in there with that helpful approach. How do I help you help the person that we supposedly both care about, right? When I come in, I just don't come in with problems. I try to come in there with solutions sometimes too, try as much as possible, even if it doesn't work out. At least I'm trying, right? And it might just be the thing like, oh yeah, we can do that. But at least they're probably not going to be angry at me for like suggesting something about how to resolve it, rather than just throwing them at yet another problem that day. Respecting the forum, this I sometimes used to go with helping folks go to places. Some folks just can't sit for very long. Period. What's my plan? And if they need to go walk around the building while I sit in the seat for a while and hold the space, well then okay, but how am I going to get them? Right? I just need to kind of know. And there's sometimes the day is just not the right day to go do this. We're going to punt and go to another day because the person might be in a better space. Sometimes folks aren't good at early mornings. Sometimes that's because the medications they're on. I had folks who's like, I knew for a fact we could get nothing done before noon. So I just did everything in the afternoon because that's what that person needed. It was a better strategy for us. Patience. Change is usually slow. Pick your battles. Don't go in there just to fight people all the time. Believe me, you'll have plenty of battles. How can you facilitate that process and not turn it into a battle? Once again, people do have legitimate constraints. Persistence. Like, continue developing those relationships. Those will help you move faster, better, lighter, whatever, with less effort. You've got a whole cohort of people here. I see 45 people on this one right now, 44 people here. We've already exposed a couple people who have expertise that you probably didn't know they had that expertise before I exposed them. Sorry, folks. All of you have this. So this is a group of people that you're going through a common experience. Keep these connections, because you guys are going to scatter to different places and you're going to have different experiences and you're going to build up different experience. I don't know what the hell that's going to be, but it'll be stuff. And then you can call upon each other and at least say, hey, you know what? We were in the same foxhole together, whatever you want to say, right? We're in the same Zooms together. That's way better than cold calling a stranger. Way better. The do nots, the donuts. Do not lie. This could cost you your credibility and your strategic relationships. And the only currency you have is your credibility. That's because you lack currency. If I have enough money, whatever on credibility, but you don't have that. So you need to maintain that credibility, especially if you work in a rural area. I don't know where all you guys are located, but if you're getting a reputation of a liar in a small town in rural California, you got to move 7 counties over. Everyone talks to everyone. You can get away with that in burning bridges sometimes, like in a place like LA, because there might be another Social Security office you can go to, or another DMV, or another whatever, but I wouldn't recommend it. Complain just to complain, must propose solutions, speak just to speak. Does anyone, this reference is probably going to fall apart at this point. I don't know. Let's see, I'm looking around. Does anyone know what it means to go Columbo on somebody? Playing the fool. Letting them say something. It's like you just kind of walk around and go, can you help? I don't, kind of bumble around a little bit. Because sometimes people will be more forthcoming with information if you don't come and hit them with a bunch of stuff. And they may open doors for you that they never would have opened because they're basically taking pity on you. However we get there. That's okay. You can think I'm a dumb schmuck. That's fine. If it helps me get the thing, then I'm a dumb schmuck. Send the wrong messenger, and I gave you a whole bunch of examples of wrong messengers. Don't be the wrong messenger. I don't want to hire you because you're making it worse for everybody. Don't be the asshole. Have your information, do your homework, figure this thing out, be planful in what you do, and you will be more effective. Whatever you're doing, it used to be my thing, whatever you're doing, I just want you to have a reason for it. You're not guaranteeing me it's going to work out, but if you got a plan and you're trying your best, well, then I can't ask for any more than that. I know you don't have control over everything. Just be thoughtful and planful. And that is that. So I'm going to stop the share and see if there's any questions in the last 2 minutes. If I can figure it out. Boom, there we all are.
Any questions for Chad before we wrap it up, ladies and gents? If not, that's okay as well. As you're contemplating that, I'd just like to give a shout out to Chad. As you can tell, his passion for advocacy, every time I hear him in a space, it exudes, it comes out of him, and it reminds me as well of that. So thank you for that, Chad. And Hannah has a question, and then we'll wrap it up after Hannah. Go ahead, Hannah.
Yeah.
Hi, Garrett. Hi there. So a lot of this has been about finding resources and utilizing the resources that you have, which I really appreciate. It is a maze out there, but like the labyrinth with the Minotaur, whole 9 yards. So I'm with you. When you don't know an expert, when you don't know what office to go to, when you can't get a hold of someone that does know, what is there a resource that you use to find out which resources you need?
Well, the first resource I have is I try to be forgiving to myself. If I don't know shit, I don't know shit. Sorry. I mean, I wasn't born with this information. None of us are, right? So I'm going to try to be forgiving of myself for not knowing it. And then it's honestly, it's fumbling around. Like you're going to run into dead ends. And that's okay. Well, at least you know it's a dead end. And eventually you'll get to the right thing. And eventually you'll sort of figure your way through it. That making sense? And it's going to take you a bit longer. And I think I asked once again, I'm not going to promise the person I'm working with that I know stuff that I don't know. And by the way, they can also spend some time fumbling around too. Because ultimately my job is to help them become a better advocate for themselves, not impress them with my advocacy skills. Right? I want them to take care of their own stuff. And really, honestly, there's some of the situations I want them to be so good at taking care of it that it doesn't become a problem. What's better than negotiating with your utility companies all the time, every single month? I don't know, paying your utility bills. So you can, spend time doing things that are more fun than that. Does that make it? So this is part of this. So I would just join side by side as we both are kind of like stupid and wander through the world, trying to figure this out. I don't say stupid, ignorant is a better word.
In my family, we call that doing it good. Just do it good. Just
do the best you can. That's at the end of the day, that's all anyone can ask you anyways.
And on that note, thank you so much, Chad. Give Chad a round of applause, a virtual round of applause, if you will. We officially have Role of Advocacy in the books.
Thank you.
Yeah. You have a bunch of shout outs, Chad, in the chat as well. So thank you, Chad. Chad's going to get ready to log off for the day. As a friendly reminder, once the class is complete, then you can complete your class evaluation. If you do it early, it will get deleted. And so Georgie deleted those that were submitted early. If it happens by accident, we understand. If you continue to do it, we'll continue to delete it because it defeats the purpose. Just being honest where we're coming from. Other friendly reminder from Georgie's desk, please note that today your self-paced digital literacy work assignment is due. Remember that if it says self-paced, that means on your own outside of CAPS, right, on Zoom. It's due today, it's not due right now, but by the end of the day as well. That is our last friendly reminder. We're going to do right now is we're going to take our second break. And then when we come back, we'll switch gears. And then Renee is going to start out with psych rehab. So please enjoy your break. It is 11:01. We'll be back at 11:11. Thank you.